If I had to start learning watercolors all over again, this is exactly what I would do to get better, quicker. A lot of beginners get caught up in things that just don't matter. For example, they obsess over the perfect supplies or dive into complicated paintings before learning how to break subjects down into simple shapes. Knowing what I know today, there are a few things I'd approach differently. Things that would make a real difference in getting faster results. So in today's lesson, I'm going to walk you through exactly what I would do if I was starting watercolor from scratch, with everything I've learned along the way. By focusing on just a few basics, you'll see real improvement sooner than you think. Hello and welcome back. If you're new here, my name's Anthony. I'm a professional artist and I've been helping people learn watercolors for nearly 10 years. And like many beginners, I used to paint all sorts of subjects, getting caught up in the details without really being sure what to focus on to actually improve. But over the years, I've discovered some of the things that can really make a difference. So, tip number one is keep your painting supplies simple. In the beginning, I keep my supplies as simple as possible. You only really need a couple of versatile brushes, a small but well-chosen palette of colours, and some decent paper. I believe the key is quality over quantity. Quality matters more than quantity at this stage, since quality supplies make watercolours easier to handle and therefore simplify the learning process. But also, keeping things minimal prevents overspending. Here's what I think you need to begin with and why. The best brushes to get started would be a large and a small round brush. Earlier I said you want versatile brushes, and a large round brush is probably the best all-round type of brush you can get. You can apply a large range of brush strokes with a round brush, from detailed marks to broad washes. A large round, which for me means about 1 inch long, is what I use most of the time. The second most used brush would be a small round. This is extremely useful for more intricate details. And it doesn't really matter in the beginning if you choose a synthetic or natural haired brush. Natural hair like sable, for example, has better water holding properties, but brush manufacturers have made a lot of progress with synthetic watercolor brushes. So if your budget can extend to natural hair, then that's great. Otherwise, stick to synthetic to start. Paper is the foundation and the source of light for your watercolor paintings, which is why quality also matters. But watercolor paper can be quite expensive. The best type of watercolor paper is made from 100% cotton. This is generally known as professional grade paper, whereas student grade paper is often made using less durable wood pulp. Cheaper student-grade paper can be useful for watercolor sketches, but it doesn't absorb or disperse water evenly, which can lead to streaky washes or unwanted blooms. Luckily, there are a few less expensive cotton papers that have good handling properties. For example, brands like Arteza and Meaden make cotton papers that are more affordable and still provide good watercolor handling. Once you find a brand and type of paper you like, try sticking with it for a while. Getting used to how one type of paper handles makes a big difference, so you're not constantly adjusting to new textures or absorption rates. Otherwise, it just takes longer to get the hang of things. Just like other supplies, paints come in both professional and student grades. Student grade paints are cheaper because they use less pigment. In other words, they have a lower pigment load. Or sometimes they use inexpensive alternatives to more costly pigments. As a result, the colours may appear less vibrant and intense, which can lead to disappointing results in your paintings. For this reason, I usually recommend starting with a small collection of artist-grade paints. Which brings us to tip number 2, choosing a limited palette. The goal of a limited palette is to choose a set of colours that give you a broad range of mixing possibilities. You want to spend less, but still be able to mix a full range of colours. The basis for any useful colour palette includes the primary colours red, yellow and blue. But 3 primary colours alone often fails in creating a full range of hues and vibrant colour mixtures. This is because each primary colour has its own colour bias. In other words, it leans towards either a warmer or cooler hue. So instead, you can opt for a mixture of primary and secondary colours, or use a split primary palette which includes a warm and cool version of each primary. A few well-chosen colours can yield a surprising range of mixes, and a smaller choice of paints helps you understand colour interactions quicker. I'll leave links for all of my recommended supplies below this video. Tip number 3 is experiment and explore. Your very first steps should involve plenty of experimenting. For example, spend time mixing colours, or let pigments flow together on the paper and see how they interact with different amounts of water. You could try simple exercises like layering shapes using a glazing technique to explore how the transparency of watercolours works and how layering affects the final appearance. One of the best exercises for testing out your new paints is a colour wheel or a colour chart. These charts help you see how your paints blend and reveal the full range of colours you can achieve. They're a great way to understand the characteristics of each colour and how they interact, and they're a lot of fun. If you'd like to learn more about how to make these, I'll leave a link to my website below this video where you can find a tutorial. Tip number 4 is understanding values early on. Values, or the lightness and darkness of colours, are even more important than the colours themselves in a painting. Understanding values early on helps bring depth and realism to your work. A lot of the students I've helped in the past have told me things like, my paintings always look so flat, or my paintings lack life and I have difficulty getting a three-dimensional look. If I could go back to the beginning, learning to create depth with tonal values would be one of the first things I'd do. Values help us convey light, shade and shadow, which gives subjects a three-dimensional feel. But I know that visualizing values in a complex scene can be very tricky. To make this easier, try using a simple value finder or a phone app that converts photos into value studies. You can even make a simple value finder yourself. I'll leave links below this video if you want to explore this further. Tip number 5 is start with small, manageable projects. At first, you should avoid the temptation of jumping straight into complex subjects. Instead, focus on small, achievable paintings that build confidence and skills little by little. An approach like this is something known as purposeful practice, and studies have shown that this is one of the fastest ways to improve any skill. This is the method I use in my watercolor masterclass, and it allows my students to focus on one element at a time and see progress quicker. For example, if you want to work on layering and glazing, start with simple shapes and practice applying thin, transparent layers on top of each other. Observe how the colours shift and darken with each added layer. Then apply this technique to a single painting, such as a still life or a floral painting, concentrating on layering to build that skill even further. Tip number 6 is embrace mistakes and learn from them. Watercolour has a mind of its own, and unexpected effects and blends of colour are part of its beauty. So embrace these happy accidents as learning experiences and try not to see them as failures. It's normal for your first attempts to fall short of your expectations. The trick is to observe the conditions under which certain effects occur. For example, was the paper almost dry when you added the colour? Did you use a lot of water or just a small amount? Was the brush loaded with strong pigment or was it a mix of light, watery paint? Noticing these details can help you understand how to recreate or avoid specific effects, and you'll gain more control of your watercolours with time. Tip number 7 is to commit to regular practice for consistency. I know you've heard it before, but consistency really is the key to faster progress. Paint as often as you can without leaving too many big gaps between painting sessions. To make this easier, try putting your painting practice into your daily schedule. Aiming for 15 or 20 minutes a day is often better than a single long session every couple of weeks. Or if you don't know what to paint, consider using a structured program that guides you step by step. Small, regular practice sessions build muscle memory and familiarity with techniques, materials and colours, speeding up your overall progress. Tip number 8 is master water control early on. Water control is one of the first big challenges a beginner faces in watercolour painting. A lot of people think it's just about how damp or dry the paper is, but it also comes down to how much water is on your brush and how much water is in your paint mixtures too. For example, a wet brush loaded with watery paint applied to an almost dry paper can cause a flood of pigment, sometimes causing watermarks like blooms. whereas a thicker mixture of paint applied to a moist wash will disperse evenly into the surface. These differences can be quite subtle, so again the key is observation. Watching how the wet paper interacts with different water to paint ratios helps you understand how to control the flow of watercolors. So in the beginning, try playing around with different moisture levels on your paper, brush and in your paint mixtures. Then observe the results and make notes of the resulting effects. And finally, tip number 9, be patient and enjoy the process. When you start learning watercolors, it's normal to feel a bit lost at first. Painting should bring you joy, not stress. So celebrate small victories, stay patient, and enjoy each brushstroke as part of your artistic journey. Positivity is a big help towards better results. And I know that sometimes perfectionism is a common hurdle for beginners. So if perfectionism is something you're battling with, go and watch this video next, where I'll share 7 practical tips to help you overcome it and let go of the fear of making mistakes. If you've enjoyed this video, please consider giving it a like and subscribing to my YouTube channel. As always, let me know your comments below.